because he was like, okay, well, we lost you. And then we almost lost you so many more times. We almost sent you in one of those orange helicopters to get like a artificial lung. Like,
so they had to resuscitate you quite a few times.
Well, yeah.
Welcome to Freedom to Know Wellness, a disability advocacy platform to hold space and give a voice to those with complex chronic pain conditions, female reproductive challenges and miscarriages, and how these experiences affect one's mental health. I am your host, Michelle Samuels. Before we start, please remember to subscribe to the Freedom to Know Wellness channel at FTK Wellness to catch all of our content, and click the bell for notifications on new posts. If you enjoy our content, consider contributing financially to aid with the Freedom to Know Wellness production by clicking the @FTK Wellness PayPal link on our channel's page or found in the description box below. Today, we're exploring the gripping journey of overcoming a rare form of acute respiratory distress syndrome, a condition that not only nearly claimed the life of my guest, but also left her grappling with chronic pain and disability. Also known as ARDS, is a serious lung condition that prevents the lungs from properly filling with air and moving oxygen into the bloodstream and throughout the body, and cause the lung tissue to scar and become stiff. In this episode, we'll hear from Risa Corbett, who defied the odds stacked against her. What began as a harrowing battle of survival morphed into a testament to the human spirit as she navigated the daunting landscape of chronic illness. Despite her challenges and her bleak prognosis, she refused to surrender to despair. Instead, she became a fierce advocate for her health, determined to rewrite the narrative of her life. Join me as I uncover the raw emotions, the moments of despair, and ultimately, the triumph of the human will. Through her resilience journey, our guest reclaimed her health and discovered a newfound purpose in empowering others facing similar struggles. Welcome to Freedom to Know Wellness, where voices are heard. Let's start the interview. Please advise, the information provided in this episode is from the opinions of the interviewee and interviewer. For further medical advice, please contact your practitioner.
Welcome to the Freedom to Know Wellness podcast. I would like to introduce a special guest, Risa Corbett. How are you doing, Risa?
Decent. The dead of winter.
I know.
I'm alive. I'm still breathing, so I'm pretty lucky.
And you know what? That comment about still breathing is going to resonate a lot with today's podcast.
Yeah.
So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Where to start?
Like age bracket, what you do for a living?
Age bracket, mid to end of 30s. Where to even start? I've lived a lot of lives inside of one. And then, what's more interesting to the health journey I've been on was I studied disability.
So that's your undergrad?
So my undergrad is actually, it's either in history or English. I always forget. I changed my major, maybe a bit too much. But it was the afterwards education I did. I had always thought I couldn't learn another language and never thought about visual language. And I picked it up very quickly and got into the deaf community and then was trained in interpreting.
Okay.
And so I'd done extensive training on working with people with disabilities and then became disabled. And one of the biggest things for me was like, I probably couldn't have been closer to that world and I knew nothing.
So let's talk about this disability that you had, which is a very rare one from what you've been explaining to me. At what age did this first hit? Before we go into the diagnosis, what age did this hit?
I was 27.
Okay.
And that was 11 years ago. Don't do the math. Don't do the math. I have 11 years past my expiry date. So I was 27. I was perfectly healthy. And within 2 days, I quickly suffocated to death, thinking I was fine. I caught a really rare strain of strep pneumonia that was particularly lethal because it created a false positive for your lungs being clear. When they listen, your lungs would sound hollow and they would be full. So by the time I didn't cough. I was suffocating to death. I thought I had the flu. Actually, I'm very stubborn about going to the hospital because... but my best friend, who's one of the most powerful human beings I've ever known, Jenny, she, deaf, autistic, social worker, championship horseback rider, all around incredible human. She had bronchitis, left work, another car hit her car, and she dragged me to the hospital. I was on life support 2 hours later. I would have died alone in my apartment if she hadn't done that.
So you went to the hospital because you realized you were suffocating. You weren't breathing.
I didn't know I was suffocating still. No cough. That's what was wild about it. They checked my lungs 3 times, and they were clear according to the standard tests.
So what caused you to go to the hospital?
I was, even if I didn't know what exactly was happening, I was dying. I just didn't know it, and I was just being, I'm sure I'll be fine. It's probably the flu. I had not had the flu as an adult, and I was like, this is supposed to be awful. And my friend who has lived in the hospital for large segments of her life, which I would then experience myself, but she was like, this is not normal. Please.
So what wasn't normal? You said that what brought you to the doctors and what wasn't normal, that why you had to go to the hospital.
Right. I had gone to the doctors actually the day before. Jenny had taken me to my doctors. I was really I'm okay, really. It's probably just the flu. And they thought it was the flu. Because I had a really high temperature. It's still wild.
So you had high temperatures.
Super high temperature. The hyper, the lack of breathing only hit right at the very, very end.
So prior to the lack of breathing, you had a high temperature.
Sweating, my heart rate was hit 160 at one point. It was crazy. My temperature got up to 104 Fahrenheit. And I think it kept going higher. And it was clear something was wrong.
Right.
I should have probably figured it out sooner. I don't know if this is a TMI, but when I had to give them a urine sample, it was black.
Oh my gosh.
It was black. I was and I hadn't peed for days because I was just, and that was the tip off for me that something was wrong. But the ER was stuffed. They had me in just a gurney in the hall. Before that was normal. This was at Mount Sinai. And from learning sign language, I can lip read. I don't want to always lip read, but sometimes I see it. And I had gone there very honestly thinking I had the flu and just wanting to be safe about it. I even gave them my medications and they wouldn't give them back to me. And they were like, you're fine. They actually got so annoyed that I was like, something's wrong. They pushed me into a hall alone in a cold hallway and I woke up screaming.
Even after you explained to them that your urine was black?
I gave them the black urine sample. They didn't check my blood work. And when I woke up screaming, they checked my blood work. And then I called it and it was just flying through the hospital. The same nurses that had been ignoring me were basically describing me I was dying without saying that.
Right, because they realized based on your blood work.
That was a blur because I suddenly was flying in a way I'd never flown. I had always had little things, I'd had a lot of GI pain because I had
gastrointestinal pain.
Gastrointestinal issues that plagued me for a lot of years, and they would cause pain that would be really severe, but never anything that really. And they were just in not as many words being well, you're they called my parents and held the phone to my head. And I didn't realize, and they didn't realize that they were doing it so I could say goodbye. They really didn't tell me what was happening. And I'm really stubborn, so I'm I'm fine.
Yes.
We did a CAT scan. We did a CAT scan at the end because they had to have me lay down for it. And at that point, I couldn't breathe. They had me one of the last things they had, I had me on 100% oxygen and I was getting 10%.
Your lungs weren't allowing you to be able to intake this oxygen.
Yeah. And they said it was torture watching me breathe. Just at that point. See, I don't know, I was in the ER, I don't know how long because I passed out in the hallway. And then tubes everywhere is the other part because they were putting tubes everywhere in ways I'd never had tubes put in. They put a central line in my neck. That was the worst. That was one of my worst because they have to cut into your neck while you're conscious with just numbing. And you have to watch on a like ultrasound as they do it, and I wasn't allowed to cough or do anything because it could.
Right.
And it was like 40 minutes because there was like a student doing it. And at that point, my heart rate is like 160. I'm sweating. I'm trying to like, and I still have, I call them the Orion's belt. They look like freckles, but there's 3 from a central line. And that central line, I did not get along. When I was finally allowed to take it out, the nurse I had at the time, I think she'd had a little bit of compassion fatigue because she was really sarcastic. She told me my parents loved me too much because they had visited me every day that they thought I was going to die while I was in a coma.
Okay, so let's back up for a second. Yeah.
I just want to tell this part.
Yes.
She sarcastically, I said, can I take it out myself? Central line. She said, yeah, go ahead. She was sarcastic. I ripped it out. I pulled my own central line out and she freaked out. She was like, I was being sarcastic. I'm like, don't be sarcastic.
It's not good to be sarcastic,
I pulled out my own central line, but that's how much I hated it. But the next time I had one in, I ended up clipping it up into my hair and making hairdos with it when it wasn't in, because at that point I'd become like a patient who's just a very patient used to being a patient. And at that point it got entertaining. I don't know. I woke up having a central line put in that time.
So by the time you were screaming in the hallway and they realized they were putting the phone to your ear to let your parents know that you're going to go based on this lung condition, which they haven't told you what this lung condition is yet.
They didn't know either.
They didn't know.
They didn't know for a lot of it. That's what was... So I wanted to quickly mention that when they put the phone to my head, I didn't know what was wrong. I was like, I'm fine. And my sister was pregnant and due the same day. And so my parents were like, oh, but we can't come see you. And that was the last words they said to me. And then afterwards they were like, why did the doctor call us? And they called back. I didn't know that though.
Okay.
And like I get why now, but they really, when this is all happening and you're in the extreme, they need you to just fight. They don't need you to know
what's going on. They need
how
you to
much of a lost cause.
Yes.
Like the biggest giveaway I had was the face of a nurse, an experience like one of those veteran nurses. And when they said they were going to like try putting me on life support, she went, and her face just, like the face she made just went.
In other words, you weren't a candidate.
Like,
for life
no,
support.
they were going to, but the face she made was like, she's not going to make it. And
yeah, so you're not a candidate.
I didn't know what was happening.
Oh,
I was like,
so in other words, so you're having
so fast. Like,
so it's a lung failure. And when we first started discussing this, you were saying that it's a very, very rare, and it's basically, the
strain of strep pneumonia.
A strain of strep pneumonia. And you mentioned basically it's acute respiratory distress syndrome, but something even more than that.
Yes. So that's what that's just the fancy term for lung failure, which is usually lethal because your lungs have failed.
Well, in your case, it was lethal.
Yeah. Well, like, and there's like, in that case, this is before COVID and everything. It was a superbug. And it was resistant. Not only did it false positive, so your lungs sounded, they only realized my lungs were full because they were doing an ultrasound when I was in the ER, and they saw that the bottom of my lungs were white, like they were not hollow. And I still wasn't coughing up anything. My lungs were completely full. And what made this strain so lethal is like, in the time it took them to figure out, like it was resistant. I think they tried 8 different strains of antibiotics. None of them worked. They had to do a lung biopsy, but they may have lost me more than once. Like I'll get to.
So let's back up a bit.
Yeah.
So you're in the hospital now. You've spoken with your parents. Now they're prepping you for surgery for the lung biopsy?
No. At that point, they don't really get. They're trying to just stabilize you, save me so they can figure out what's happening. They really don't know what's happening, because the conventional things, like, it was really at the time like, what is this? Like, why is it? Like, I remember, this is afterwards, that they so many doctors came to listen to the phenomenon of my lungs that my ribs were really like bruised and sore from just having doctors like listen and knock on my lungs and have them sound hollow when they weren't.
Because they're seeing on the ultrasound that they're
like even afterwards when they still had like residual things, they sounded perfectly clear. So I had a lot of doctors listen to my breathing, like students, and I did a lot of like studies, but people didn't really tell me why, because it was still quite it was all very, very serious, and I only really got that via like being stubborn. I'd be like, I'm way too curious and asking too much, probably not to my advantage, but also some of this they didn't tell my parents. And one of the most important things, they only told me right when I was being discharged, and only because of that situation.
So what led to you going into a coma?
Lung failure.
As they were testing you.
Yeah, so basically they put me on life support, and my lungs were failing, and then they failed. Apparently while I was out, they did a lung biopsy. I do remember dying. Like I remember realizing I was dying, and like all these, like it was very bizarre. But it all occurred to me, I was in a coma for a week, and it felt like the same split second. It felt like 15-minute window. I didn't dream. But yeah, that.
So when the nurse was like, in regards to putting you on life support,
and then
they decided to go
masks
ahead.
And gowns, and I'm on like ton of oxygen, and I'm by the way still being really stubborn. I remember some
even as
resident
you go
doctors,
under,
some resident doctors. I'm in the CCU, which is above the ICU.
Yes.
And these two residents come in and just start feeling up my abdomen without saying anything. And I said, "Get your hand off of me." And they were like, and I was like, "How dare you touch me?" I'm like literally like, "How dare you?" And they were like, "Oh," like they were so apologetic.
Yeah.
But and actually, okay, this is when I woke up from, like, the minute they knew, when I started being really sassy with my parents, they were like, "She's awake!"
They knew she's alive! She's back to herself!
She's being difficult, yes!
So, okay, so they put you on life support to run all the tests because your breathing is so labored. And you're not able to breathe at all, because I know when my brother was on life support, he couldn't breathe, so they had to put him under.
They had to intubate me.
To intubate you, exactly.
That was my last, I just remember, the yellow gowns and the masks, and they had sprayed my throat and all these things that they were prepping me to be intubated. And then they were like sedating me as these like 4 gowned people like moved towards me to do this. And that's out. And then I just woke up feeling like it was the same 15 minutes for some reason. It just being like, oh, was that a dream? And then looking at my arms, because they'd put they'd had trouble because I have Raynauds phenomenon getting my veins. So they had several miss things, and there was weird markings on my arms. And I was like, that's weird. And I was in a room alone, and in the CCU or the ICU, you don't see all the machines you're hooked up to. You see a blank hospital wall, like in a general ward. So I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Yeah. Except there were all these pictures of me as a baby on the wall, and then there's a picture of my sister holding a tiny little squidgy red thing, because my niece had been born the same day.
Oh my gosh.
The same day that I technically near death experience. Like, obviously I call it my unbirthday. I lived. But I remember at some point in this process, like, realizing I was dying. I don't know when exactly. Like, I didn't have illusions about
while
anything.
You were
like,
under.
Yeah. Like, the only thing I remember, and I remember really vividly, was suddenly everything not going dark, going bright. Like, going sepia. Like, golden tones, like, losing color and going, oh, I'm dying. Like, just knowing, like, in a weirdly confident, like, oh, I'm dying. This is death. And... you know Harry Potter?
Yes.
They pull the memory and you can, like, dive into it like watching a movie.
Right.
I had this weird, like, they say your life, like, that I hold your life. Like, I really had no illusions about what might happen. And I was surprised. But it was like I experienced my whole life simultaneously in 1 second. But I actually saw it all. Good, bad, ugly, boring. And there was no one there. There was no white light or anything. But it was as if I was being asked, are you okay with dying? And I was only 27, but I was like, you know what? I did that. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And this is what messed with me later was actually I felt a peace I have not felt since. It was just and then just hospital room. Like, okay, that was a dream. The first friend that came in to visit me did not know I had been in a coma. She just heard I was in the hospital. Came to just see how I was doing. And I didn't know my parents knew I was there. I didn't know what was happening because I still thought it was the same day.
So what did the doctors say happened to you during that week that you were in a coma?
Let me quickly tell you about the friend. This was a brain break moment for me because this is where reality kind of I ended up with PTSD afterwards. As I sort of like was in shock and processing it, and as I start to discover the reality of what happened to me while I was unconscious, it was a weird process. And my friend coming in, I'm telling her I'm all excited about the event we were planning that weekend. It was a U of T swing dance thing, and it was Alice in Wonderland themed. And she's looking at me like, and she goes, Risa, that was last week. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I just remember her showing me her phone, and it's a week later. And I'm like, what? And I tried to stand up, and the bed starts screaming, and just nurses coming in. They're like, she's awake. And my parents showing up being like, oh, because they were on lunch.
Well, just because your friend didn't know that you were in a coma.
She didn't know.
So she just came in to start talking to you, not
and
knowing.
then she's like, why are you talking about the event from this, like, that's like past? I'm thinking it's coming up. And that was just a like weird conversation. Like, because for me, I was fine with going forward like nothing had happened.
Right.
I don't think it would ever have been like that. But yeah.
So what did the doctor say happened while you were in a coma?
That's the interesting part. So they didn't want to tell me what had actually happened. They sort of, well, the first doctor that tried to tell me what had happened did something I've never seen a doctor do before. He flipped through the chart looking confused. He was just like, and he's like, it's a miracle. And then he like literally was like, I can't believe, like the look on his face is like, I can't believe I said that. I was like, what? And he was like, well, we don't understand exactly why you survived. They didn't expect me to wake up. They didn't expect me to make it at all. And apparently, so then they don't want you to know when you're first still in such a not stabilized state. They don't really want you to know what you just went through.
Right.
And I have no idea, like, I'm fine with going, oh yeah, that was just a dream. That wasn't real. And it was even worse than that. Like, I'm so stubborn and curious. So I was like asking everybody, and I finally asked a resident who, I guess he just wasn't told. So he told me everything. And I kid you not, I feel like that's the moment the PTSD kicked in, because he was like, okay, well, we lost you. And then we almost lost you so many more times. We almost sent you in one of those orange helicopters to get like a artificial lung. Like,
so they had to resuscitate you quite a few times.
Well, yeah, it wasn't clear. Like, it sounded like they at least once had to. And it would explain a lot. I had a lot of like, I was still kind of in shock. And then I was I was hallucinating afterwards briefly. Like, it took so while. Like, I woke up and then it's like my body started to wake up. And waking up from a coma is a little weird. It is kind of like a... But before that moment happens, there's this weird, like, why can't I open my eyes? Period. Where you're like, come on, eyelids, let's do this.
Yes,
like, and they won't open.
Yeah.
And you're like, my body has desynchronized from my brain.
Yes.
And I've gotten to actually help another close person in my life wake up from a coma like that. Story for a different time. But they don't know how much you can understand or hear, but I remember being like, remember what happened to me. You're okay. Your prognosis is fine. Your brain just needs to reconnect with her body, and her just relaxing and falling asleep. And before that, she'd been thrashing around, like, but still on, like, not conscious yet. And I guess that probably was like, it's just like a sort of a fuzzy blank.
So now you're awake. How long do you remain in the hospital, and what other steps did they take in regards to your recovery to be discharged?
So it was a lot. I was there for, I think, I know it was a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had to first get out of the ICU. And that friend of mine, Jenny, she had networked my friends and family together to find out where I was. And they had actually kept a journal where every person who visited me wrote a log in it. And I had this journal full of like dozens of people who'd come and spoken to me while I was unconscious. It's wild. Like that so much had happened, it just felt like zero time. Like, and that like, see, there is a picture my mother took, because I always, I don't, as a kid, I remember saying, if I'm ever unconscious, take a picture like in a hospital or something. And so she did. And I'm glad she did, but I never really want to see this image again, because the view I had was like a normal hospital bed. This is the view of me hooked up to life support. I look like I'm on the old Star Trek hooked up to one of those computers. There's so many machines.
Yeah.
There's so many tubes in me, they can't put a hospital gown.
Yeah.
They just kind of threw it over.
Threw it over, yeah.
I look dead.
Yeah.
And my parents didn't know what to do, so they're kind of awkwardly standing next to me like, it's, ooh. And my parents, I can't imagine what that was like for them. So they were in a car accident. That happened to me. Like they
were in a car accident before?
Yeah, my mother took 3 pictures in the same 24-hour window. Their wrecked Santa Fe, me in a coma, my newborn niece.
And everyone has lived to tell the tale.
Yeah. It's my niece's 11th birthday on Friday. She and I are very, very close. And she's important to me because when I realized that was my niece, I had to, like, it took me I had to get to the point where I was safe to even hold her or see her for the first time. And my sister, she thought she was going to lose me without ever getting to see me because they wouldn't let her come near me. Because it was like some kind of pathogen that was crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just wild. But my niece, like, I got to tell her, like, as a kid, we explained it as, like, you know, Auntie Riri couldn't, they call me Auntie Riri. And, like, I couldn't wake up, you know? But when I saw her, I was like, you know what? I'm going to live to watch you grow up, and I'm going to be in your life. And I don't care what they say. And both times when she was a little kid and as an adult, she cried with happiness when I told her, like, and, you know, I thought I could be, like, she and I are very close.
Yes.
This is very important.
So you have this backtracking now. So you have this super fug.
It's quite the...
It's created this extreme case with your lungs that it's lung failure. You're supposed to die. They resuscitate you, at least you know for a fact once, but maybe multiple times while you're in a coma. You miraculously wake up from the coma as they weren't expecting you to. Did you have you were intubated at the time?
Yes.
So when you woke up, you're trying to talk then, because you can feel that.
Get this. This is what's wild. I could easily talk in sign language, but could not vocalize.
No, you couldn't vocalize.
They were trying to get an interpreter for me in the hospital because they were. I was too. I could do the signs, but when they would keep giving me a piece of paper to point at the letters, and the way that they go about it, it's a very silly way of doing it, because if you have to point on a tiny thing and you're a little like dunk.
Yeah.
I could give an accurate sign, but when it was like a precise point, I kept hitting the wrong letter.
Right.
And but I could fluently talk in sign language.
So you were talking to your friend in sign language?
They wouldn't let her in because of her hearing ear dog. At the time, they told me I would have to wait until I was in the general ward to see her. And I tell you, I got out of that ICU so fast. The nurses were like, it's going to be days. And I was so stubborn. You know Mulan, the song, I don't know.
You mean the musical?
The song,
yeah,
like the Be a Man song. Not because of any gender things, but the beat of it. I put that on loop. And I was walking within a few hours. And when that nurse saw me come out with the oxygen tanks, like, yeah, because that's what I needed to get to the general ward, she was like,
You know what? And for our listeners, Risa's also, I was about to say jazz dancer. Sorry, I'm having a brain fog. Oh my goodness, please correct me.
Blues dancer?
Not blues, Lindy Hop.
Lindy Hop, swing,
Swing,
blues.
you know, all of those type of styles of dance. So as dancers, music is what keeps us going. Like for me, like if I can be having a hard time moving, but as soon as I hear music, it inspires me. So you having that on repeat, it helped you to force to say, okay, you know what? My body remembers movement. My body remembers music. Let's start going here. And it inspires you.
Yeah. But you know what's interesting? It was weird, actually. What actually got me into discovering the deaf world was my love of music and sound that I completely lost briefly. So after, like, the day that I got discharged was when I finally found out the situation that had happened.
And this is a month now after.
Yes.
Okay.
And they had used me for countless tests. And again, they never specified, and I'm sure I have like my full massive health record. And so it's the strain, the particular like super bug, like that's what they would call it. Strain, like the actual name. I just know, like, I can't remember the full name of it. But so.
Do you remember the acronym?
No, I just, and I'm sure I have it, but I would always get tip of the tongue.
Okay.
But I could find it. But they'd use me for, I really believe in student learning. So they kept using me for tests, but I remember the day I was getting discharged being like, I am so unlucky. It's a terrible thing that has happened to me. Why me? Getting into this really like self-pity head state. And I was mad about something. I don't remember what. And then another nurse came in to do a study, and I did something I normally wouldn't do, and I was a bit short with her. And I was like, why? Why do you guys keep doing this? Isn't it just like silly study stuff? And she's like, do you know you're one of the only survivors of this strain? We need to know why you made it and all those other people didn't.
They didn't make it.
And what I hadn't known was that same strain, because of the nature of it, took out a lot of young, healthy people. Like, not just like weaker system people, just like me. I was fully able-bodied, healthy.
Yes.
2 days. I had an incredible immune system, still do. And it took me out. And there's still, like, there were a lot of debates. Apparently I have unique lung architecture because I'm a swimmer, dancer, but also I did opera. And I had a bit of extra lung. So not symmetrical lungs, but it expanded. And they never were able to pinpoint what, like, allowed me to survive that little bit.
Well, anyone that's an athlete has more lung capacity, has a better, oh goodness, I'm forgetting the acronym right now. Volume, there's an acronym for it, but in regards to the amount of volume that you can capacity to hold it's something within the lung capacity, but the amount of oxygen you can be able to hold within your lungs.
Which I know I have an abnormally high.
You will.
They did actually study mine at one point, and they said that it was really unusual because I had the lungs of like a 20-year-old male athlete, which was really atypical. Because apparently, I'd have to look up the exact info, but they were showing me that, like, this is the arc that most women always fall into, and you are in this arc.
Right, and because you're a swimmer too.
Yeah. And
interesting.
Yeah, there were a lot of, but I just remember this moment of being like, oh, I'm actually incredibly lucky. I had just been in this defeated dialogue about how unlucky I was.
Yes.
And it never occurred to me that was what was happening.
Right.
Like, they really didn't tell me a lot. Because again, they kept, I think they really did think they were going to keep losing me. And they kind of really did. Because what the doctors had to say was confusing. They both didn't have a label for what had happened to me. So one of the things that's important to know, because it was what really I'd had basically, they said they'd seen it before where somebody got so close to death like that it could cause like neurological like upheaval, like malfunction. And I woke up in incredible pain.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. So since we don't know what this superbug is called, we'll just call it, for just name's sake, a
They
very
call it
rare acute respiratory distress syndrome?
Well, I would say strep pneumonia.
Or strep pneumonia?
Mutated strep pneumonia is what they kept calling it, as like instead of giving the full like scientific name for it, because that's a long one, they've just called it mutated strep pneumonia.
So now that you've been released from the hospital, and you mentioned that your body is in a lot of pain, what other conditions did this mutated strep pneumonia cause to your body?
It debilitated me. It didn't just cause severe chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is like my whole system malfunctioned. Like, I didn't feel like I could control my body like I could. Like, my mobility was impacted, my energy, my spoons. Like, I just didn't. There were a lot of things that just weren't there anymore. And yeah, and it was one of the things. The pain though was, I basically was, my pain scale changed because I woke up and stayed at a 9 out of 10, and that 9 out of 10 became my new like 5.
Yeah,
and yeah, that was like that.
Because I know
for 8 years.
For years, I know when we first met, and you were using a wheelchair, and I had my walker and my accessible scooter, and you were mentioning that your condition, even though not directly fibromyalgia, but it caused fibromyalgia symptoms.
Yeah, it's like, I would describe it as, again, like what the fascinating thing about what, in retrospect, I can go, what? Why did the doctors describe it like this? Again, I really want to look up the specifics. I love specifics. And that's why I have like my full health record, just to be like, look, I have MRIs of my brain. Fascinating. Like, I lost my own train of thought there for a moment.
That's okay. You were saying that, oh God,
yeah, I know, right?
This is like the worst that happens
the whole
to two of us.
Okay.
I deal with
strep pneumonia.
Yes. So we mentioned in regards to the fibromyalgia and the fact that it created that type of pain. Mm-hmm.
So they had, like they said, it was very rare. They had seen it before, but it could not be recovered or improved. I was stuck like that.
Yes.
And they were really definitive about that. They were like, I was like, I'm going to recover. And they're like, no. In fact, you might not make it past the next few years. Like they saw me degenerating, not improving. And see, I grew up, one of my close friends when I was growing up, she has a very rare brain disorder, Rasmussen's encephalitis. I do remember that, even though I'm bad for it.
I've actually heard of that, yes.
She had half her brain amputated. Jeez, wow. And when we're both around 12 at the time, and I remember afterward her being in a wheelchair. And all the adults were like, look, she's really optimistic that she's going to walk again. She's not, And I don't know why the adults were reinforcing that, but they did. And I remember us going to the movies and her being like, oh, I love this song. I want to dance. And me being just a kid being like, but you can't dance. And her just looking at me and being like, and just like dancing anyway. And and for a moment I was like embarrassed. And then I saw how happy she was. And I was like, screw it. Who cares?
Oh, yeah.
But the dynamic movement, she loved to dance so much. She danced herself out of that wheelchair into, I just remember going from like walker with braces and then braces with a cane. Now she just to this day walks free. And she's not supposed to be alive either. And so I think I drew from that.
Yes.
So when they were like, this is the situation, I'm like, no. If we don't know anything about this, then that means we don't know anything about this. You can't say that definitively.
So this condition has affected your mobility. It's affected your mobility from top to bottom.
I couldn't dance, and I couldn't for a long time sign. I was cut off from my 2 big social groups.
Yes.
Immediately cut off because I could not talk to some of them, and I could no longer dance. And most of, not because they weren't trying to come to me, but that becomes an immediate, if I can't talk to my deaf friends.
Yes. Because your hands are incapacitated.
And lip reading doesn't work for a lot of people. Right. It doesn't work. And I believe in, but it hurt. Yeah. And my arms were my body became heavy, even though I progressively kept getting skinnier and
Yeah,
skinnier
yeah,
in a
'cause
way
you
I
were
did
very
not.
thin, yeah.
I got skeletal, and I'd always been curvier my whole life, and I always thought I'd be like skinny and happy. I hated it. I hated it. I felt so unattractive, and then my pants were always falling off because I didn't have any curve to me anymore. And but yeah, I got like there were pictures of me where you can see my bones sticking out, and like it was I couldn't keep weight on. It was getting bad, but I continued I basically so it's a degree in history. Apologies. And how I know that is I history degrees. It's all research, and I from learning interpreting. I had really strong mastery of English, and I actually would do a lot of editing because I was an English major for most of the history degree. I would do I had a lot of friends who were nurses or medical students, and I would edit their papers.
So was this a double major you did, or was it major minor?
Major minor.
So minor in English, major in history?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. That is time. Oh, fades. But I had a background in research, and I was like, so why don't I, if there's no specialists in this, why don't I kind of become my own specialist? I started looking up, and this was a bit into it. It wasn't a beautiful journey of all the way up. Oh, I hit some lows. But the lows, I think I got to experience some of the best and worst of humanity.
Yes.
And I wasn't a person who believed in people. But the people that came through for me who didn't have to, there were people who also had health issues, who really showed me that generosity had nothing to do with money.
It's support within your own community.
Yeah, and it was a world I was like, why, do this, for me, it kind of broke my brain. But I don't think I could have gotten to here. I had my friend Jenny as this incredible role model of what, I was thrilled about getting a chair. I was like, yeah, everyone I know is awesome who has a chair.
Yeah, and it's freedom.
And I am like a sprinter in a chair, and I was so slow. And I remember the first time I got to try out my new chair, looking back at the occupational therapist, and they're jogging, and I'm going uphill in slush, snow in the winter, and I'm like, woohoo, and they're like jogging behind me trying to keep up. And that chair to me wasn't it was liberty.
Yes.
By that point, I was trapped in my home. I was so isolated. And this is before we got better with things being more accessible online.
Yes.
I was the isolation got to me.
So welcome back. We're going to discuss what this experience now with this condition now affecting your mobility, and it's still not even 100% clear on why you have this condition, why it affects you so in this way. How did it affect your mental health? We were talking about, being the isolation, not being able to dance, not being able to sign, swim, any of that. How did it affect your mental health?
It devastated it. It destroyed it. The first couple years were a grief, sadness journey. I had this, my friends would joke I was terminally optimistic because I was just, you couldn't tell me I wasn't going to recover.
Yes, exactly.
But it was still, it was like being, for anybody who's not experienced that, it was like being trapped in quarantine perpetually where the world isn't coming back. Probably. And that state can really get to you, especially severe pain, you know? And, they had me on a lot of medications, and I had very severe PTSD initially. And then it still impacted me for several years afterwards.
And just to recap, which medications were you on? I know you probably on, there's a lot, but just the main staple ones that you're on.
Not, well, now or back then?
No, back then.
Oh, they had me on way too many painkillers, and it completely robbed me of my mind.
Yeah.
And, what made there's so many things that made a difference in my health, and one of them is my ability to problem solve outside the box that I couldn't do. And it I would start a sentence and have no idea what I was talking about midway and be like, You know, like, I can't imagine, like, it feels like that was about, of those 8 years, that was about the first half of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided, so some things happened, like, now one of the features is I had only one, like, thing come up with my health that had been a GI surgery I needed to have way before all of this.
Okay.
Well, not way. I was 22. And this was like, I remember I had to go to the States. Then a U.S. doctor had to do it because they didn't do it laparoscopically here.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he had a unique approach and he botched it, and we didn't know that. We didn't actually know that for a long time. I didn't know that. When they took scans and stuff, it's a lot, like, they had to do some creative, like, I've had some really systemic issues, and basically he was supposed to, he somehow reconnected and this is wild, my gallbladder to my stomach. So all the bile goes through my stomach. And one of the other times I almost died was due to internal bleeding from ulcers.
So hold on a second. This was after you've gone through a coma.
This is before.
This is before. Oh.
So but this didn't impact me.
Okay.
Like it did. I knew that, like, you know, it was, but it didn't impact me like it did, and I didn't know. There were so many little things that I took every opportunity to advance my situation. Like, we showed, like, a history of severe, like, iron. I didn't have stored iron, and I needed to start getting IV iron infusions, and only women's college does that, and you have to qualify. And technically my blood levels were normal, and some doctors, like, I had to really learn how to respectfully disagree. Yes. Because I, had been kind of ignorant of the medical world beforehand, and how doctors have about 100 ways to say, I don't know, in a way that seems like they know what they're talking about. And yeah, you can't really always be like, yes, okay, that is correct. Because...
Exactly.
And I started to just kind of really, and to this day, I still track everything. I keep track of things. I went, like, at first I went to a low place. And this is an interesting one, because mental health, I would say that I recovered my physical health first.
Before you attained your mental health.
I had collected quite a bit of trauma. I was really life or death fight for about 5 years, where I was in and out of the hospital. I practically lived at Western. I would always write the same quote. My heart's still beating, so I'm pretty lucky.
Oh my goodness. And you had to go to the hospital because of the lung failure again? Or is it all these other... It caused
me, like, there were so many things malfunctioning. So I would be, like, they would need to put NG tubes in because I would be aspirating bile. And then the pain would just go off the charts, even for me.
So they give you more additional pain medication. Yes, and then I understand that.
At one point, so I find, like, what's crazy about the botched GI thing is how no one told me. They thought it was weird. They did all this imaging, and they knew it was like that. And only finally I remember a technician showing me and me going, why is my gallbladder attached to my stomach? She said, I thought you knew it was like that. I said, no.
Oh, and my gosh.
I was like, that's crazy. And I don't know what happened. Like, I still to this day, because the U.S. medical system's crazy, and that experience was not great. I had to be discharged the same day. Again, woke up screaming.
And so your parents didn't know that this had happened to you as well?
No, they came with, like, my mom went with me to Vegas. It was the doctor was in Vegas. Okay. I remember having a tan and these big white teeth and being like, you're a shyster. And I think he got the pantsuit off of him because...
I was going to ask you if you sued him for what had happened, because you're now stuck with a condition that...
But what's interesting... the asymmetrical extra lung expansion could have also been partly due to a little bit of extra space I had. So it could have helped. They don't know. It was so weird. Like, we've been trying to pieces. It's like you've been given 3 different puzzles, and you're like, make a coherent puzzle out of these 3 different random pieces. And you're like, yes, you're cutting new cuts, and like, you're trying to like make it into a picture, you know? And that is, even though I have my medical record, good luck. The first 4 years, it was 1,100 pages from the hospital, all the specialists. Like, I lived in doctor's appointments.
But were they willing to support you? Because I know, and from personal experience, when your book gets to a certain length, they're like, oh, well, there's nothing more that we can do for you.
And that's
we'll pass you off to your GP, and your GP kind of looks at you like, wah, wah. Like,
yeah, that was where I had to, that was, you know, the investigating my own thing and really kind of taking control of my situation happened a couple of years in, where I kind of put my foot down because it was kind of a really lowest moment of my life. And at the same time, my best friend like came into my life and believed in me so relentlessly it was annoying. I was like, fine, I don't believe in me, but I believe in you. I guess it works. I'll just kind of believe in me. Kind of, you know, and like I realized I had this real breakthrough experience where I realized that what I had experienced, that peace that I'd had, I had a lot more peace with the idea
of
dying than I did with living.
And do you think, going back to the NDE experience, near-death experience, you said you were having this vision and you were asked the question. You don't remember seeing anyone specifically, but you remember hearing like someone asking you the question.
Not even hearing. I just knew that it was like the sense that the reason I had seen my life like that was to really be like, are you okay with dying? And my answer was yes.
Yes, you felt you still.
And I genuinely remember being like, yes.
Even in your 27 years, you felt
but
like
I fit like a ton into those 27 years, like, and you know, I was like, you know what? Yeah, and it does feel like 2 different lives, interestingly enough. Like, but it haunted me afterwards, that feeling of peace, and
because you longed for it,
and like really. I'm very lucky I had great role models, but it was very difficult. I didn't have I had not peers who had my condition, who were my age range or anything.
Right.
And I came from a super healthy family that had never had physical, mental health things at all. And I was like, this unusual.
Right.
Like, I mean, not to like, we have a really great health. Just
care system overall.
My mom just broke her first bone and she's almost 80. And it healed like the best the doctor had ever seen. It was her ankle.
And as you said, your family keeps themselves in good health. So with the hospital, the support that this hospital provides you, you're on a multiple of medications, too many to count. Where were you going for your pain management support? Was it at Wasser Pain Clinic? Was it at Women's College? Where were you going and having?
I know I was at Wasser.
Yes, yeah, that was my place too.
I'm trying to think, because it was.
And Wasser Pain Clinic is at Mount Sinai Hospital.
And Mount Sinai is the hospital that saved my life. And they did, because that was wild. It's amazing that they figured it out in time.
Yes.
The way that they did. And like, yeah.
And it's a good teaching hospital too. So
yeah. And that's why, like, even when it was like, oh, I was like, go ahead, you know?
And so did you find that they offered you a lot of support in that, like, even though you're still an enigma of a condition? Yeah.
Like, I would say for me, even there's a part of the journey for me was my identity getting in the way.
That's for a lot of
I
people.
had a lot of grief at first with the person I had been. And the interesting thing about that is I wouldn't take back any of it. None of it. It was the education of a lifetime. I like I like this version of me. don't think I could have ever learned that kind of humility, that kind of perspective, that kind of appreciation for just that next breath of air. Like there's a magic to everyday life that I still experience from fighting for it like that.
The appreciation of the little things makes it makes you expand so much to say, you know what, if I can appreciate this little stuff that I was able to do, not being able to breathe, not being able to walk, use your hands. And now you appreciate things even more.
Like in my wheelchair, I'd be like, yes, I love the smooth movement. Because before I'd be like walking, like really like, ow, and I was like, yeah, baby.
Freedom.
Like, freedom. Like, just like little flames behind my wheels, like, woohoo. Like, it was great. And like, for me, it was a real turnaround. Like, my friend was encouraging me to like, look at what was happening with my mental health. Because I was really like, bah, bah, bah. And I just remember being at this conference and being like, I'm not going to learn anything here. And then I had this moment where I realized I was afraid of living and afraid, like, I had like experienced some real negative things at that point. I'd experienced some discrimination issues, there was some real fallout. Yeah. And even like within that world. And it was defeating at the time, but not defeating. Like, I don't think, I every time, and this is something I still am kind of like, about myself. What happened to me was my worst nightmare my entire life. I always thought, if I ever had something happen where I was disabled and in severe pain, I just wouldn't want to live. And it tells me how much any person can know themselves, because I had a fiery will to live, like, and pain, if you're not in pain, sounds god-awful as an idea, that it is awful, but it's livable. Like, it's not always, but it was more livable than my imagination. And my fear has always been eclipsed, including dying, including everything I went through, the fear I had before I experienced it, this is the experience, this is the fear.
When you've gone through, I'm just speaking also from my own experience when I've heard from other people saying the same thing, when you've gone through extensive amount of severe pain, you begin to realize, if I can manage that pain, I can manage anything in life.
Yeah.
Whether you're limited or not. It's frustrating as hell, but whether you're limited or not, you can be able to thrive. So my question to you is, before, because we're showing the miracle of where she's at now, but that's an exciting part of this journey and her story. But while you were now dealing with your chronic pain, going to these pain clinics, they're trying to figure out what's wrong with you.
Pain injections.
Yeah, pain injections. Oh goodness, speak about the pain injections before I go into my question.
Pain injections, lidocaine, sometimes cortisol. Yes, they're literally they're injecting these into your nerves. Like, so they're basically going, haha, this is the point of pain. Yes. It's excruciating. It's excruciating. I brought like several important people in my life, and it was like torture for them, and I'm just like, this is just my week. Like, like, and it's like, it's funny.
I remember those.
In terms of like starting to manage my own existence a little better, like, that friend really encouraged me. His name's Mikey. He really, I would say, saved my life. Like, he really, I remember being like, just let me be depressed. Like, and he really believed in me, and he's still my best friend to this day. Yeah. Almost 20 years. But he really encouraged me, and at this conference, I was never a crier. And when I realized I was afraid of living, I just started breaking down and bawling with like 150 other people that are not caring. Because I never let myself express like that. I'd not let myself cry. Like, I was so like, gonna get through it. Like, that I never let myself just go, this sucks. And it allowed me to reframe everything from kind of that moment. I just was like, okay, what if instead I choose my life as it is? But where do I want to take it? And I remember the conference leader saying, make a really unreasonable goal. And I remember just laughing and going, okay, craziest thing I can think of. recovering my health, like literally laughing because it was so ridiculous. And I redid that conference after I had recovered. And it was wild. It was the same leader. And it was quite the experience because I got to tell her that I achieved that. But after that, I got really proactive in my health because I realized that I had been a spectator in my health. I had been observing and listening, but I wasn't in action, in the game, making plays. I was watching other people tell me, show me plays and describe them, but I wasn't part of the game. And it was my team, like that's my team, you know, like that's my life. And just going, okay, what is missing? And going, okay, I need a doctor that it will let me take weird directions, because that had been difficult as I had a lot of insight and I knew what I was talking about, but my doctor at the time was like, I'd had an amazing doctor that helped me initially, and unfortunately he'd had a stroke and had a physician's assistant who ended up changing to another, and like the whole thing kind of fell apart, and I ended up at he was not a bad doctor, but he just wasn't what I needed. And ending up going on, it was a difficult journey, but a peer friend of mine ended up like basically advocating for me to her doctor to ask him to take me on, and he did.
Okay.
And he would take up my crazy leads. I'd be like, okay, ding, this.
Exactly.
And what's crazy about that is that led over years of doing that. It eventually became him agreeing, surgeons agreeing, and it became this sort of 3-in-1 surgery that I had a few years ago that actually recovered my health.
So so you're doing all this research on your own. The doctors had basically given up the idea of anything that could help you. They said, you're going to live with this. You may not live for many years. You're just going to live with this pain, and we just want to give you the ability just to live comfortable. You have the mind change. You have the changing their mindset in regards to living. And you're doing your research because
one of
you
the
come from a
important
research
things I had to
background
do
too.
was I decided. So at one point we had that botch surgery corrected.
You mean the one for the stomach?
Yeah, so the gallbladder was not doing that anymore.
Okay.
Because it kept landing me in the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
Because I couldn't breathe.
That was one of the surgeries you said you had to go for. I remember when you're saying, yes, I had to go for that. Oh my goodness.
I noticed, even though this shouldn't have had anything to do with it, my pain significantly improved. And I was like, okay, this is not...
After that surgery.
Yeah. And then I, at some point, realized, narcotic syndrome? I was convinced, because my pain had substantially improved, and then somehow it had, medication had gone up, and then it was still up, and I was like, is this narcotic syndrome? And I made one of the hardest, scariest decisions I've ever made, because at that point, they had me on fentanyl. I was on
With the patch?
150 fentanyl.
Yeah, the patches?
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And they had me on the equivalent of that in oral medication, too.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah.
And I functioned really, like the memory part was a bummer, but I functioned in my life.
Because you were doing things. Like when I met you, you were doing things. Share with us some of the things you were doing, even in your wheelchair.
Yes. Well, one of the things that I got into that I still love is mermaid swimming, which I originally got into to just surprise my niece as Ariel, because she loves The Little Mermaid, and I did. And I didn't realize the tail that I'd gotten was actually swimmable. I got into it, and then one of the dancers, he'd asked me to make a 20s style men's 2-piece bathing suit in the stripes. And I was like, okay, I gotta ask. And then he shows me his mermaid tail, and I'm like, oh, people do, look, there's a community. He's like, yeah. And a lot of the people who mermaid swim have like health things that has caused them to find a self of expression that is more liberal. Like for me, I couldn't dance, but I could swim in the water in this tail in a way that was really expressive and physical.
Good
and
exercise too.
Really good workout. Yeah, those tails, the bigger and the heavier and the fancier, it's like the bigger the costume, the better the workout.
Yes.
Really genuinely.
Yeah.
Like what kind of, and then it's a social community, and like I love, like I I've done many things, one of which was so I was trained in opera, but I decided not to go into it, and I went into costume design first. And so, when I was trained in costuming, my teacher was Dr. Lynn Sorge, who had her doctorate in Victorian underwear, which is basically corsetry. She was one of the few masters in that area, and I didn't know how lucky I was at 18 that she taught me like corsetry.
Oh,
like
wow.
rigorous, and it's interesting. Like, I love really difficult, challenging projects. And underwater performance mermaid tales is like really challenging,
Yes.
and I yes. So it was both a means to make, like, the pool that's nearby us. I like to know my rights, and a lot of the mermaids are like, "Oh, we don't have anywhere to swim. We're not allowed to." I'm like, and I looked up the laws, and I'm like, they can't do that.
Right.
And I was like, technically, they can only make you prove that you can swim in it, and during leisure things. And they were like, really?
Yeah.
And this pool I originally had, when they built it, I was like, this is my tale. I'm going to be jumping in your pool and crazy things, okay? And I'd be like, hi guys, and they were like, oh my goodness, but they were entertained. Like, I would swim laps on the bottom of the pool, and like other swimmers would be like,
But that improved your lung capacity.
yeah, like it
really
and it was
did.
really good for my health too. Like, and it was creative, it was social. That community is really it's like the dance community, really nurturing, and like we would go on road trips and do cottage things, and like in the summer we'd it was like.
So even with the chronic pain, the medication, as hard as it is on your system, it was at least helping you at the time to be able to manage to still live somewhat of an enjoyable life.
I got into mermaid swimming after I got rid of all the painkillers.
Oh, wow.
So, which is, that's where I was going to, that I made a really hard judgment call, because I didn't know how it was going to turn out, to go to just CAMH, detox all of it, and find out what my base was. And I was terrified, because my fentanyl compromising is one of, PTSD would probably be one of the worst things I've experienced, because it's a mind breaker. I would say that fentanyl compromising equally, if not more so, because it messes with you.
Yeah.
And I had to go to the hospital multiple times, and it wasn't always a good experience. I had a doctor refuse to treat me, acknowledged me as a chronic patient who took it legitimately. And -15, I'd come in an ambulance with no coat, no shoes. He pushed me into the waiting room in a wheelchair, and I didn't know what was happening still, and I couldn't walk. And then I walked back into the thing, and he's mocking me to the other doctors, going, "Stupid chronic patient, won't take your meds." And what had happened was the ambulance took me. I thought my godmother was coming with me.
Yeah.
She didn't. She left my medication in a bag in the house. My parents were on vacation, and I had just been visiting them and needed to go to their local hospital in Richmond Hill, Mackenzie Health. Don't go there. It's the worst hospital I've ever been to. Sorry, guys. It's terrible. The doctors you have there are fired from other bad hospitals. Sorry, I found out that doctor was a douchebag that some of my nurse friends had known, who'd gotten fired from somewhere else, and I get it. It's like, oh, you take this legitimately. You're a legitimate patient, and it's compromising.
Yeah, because you have to sign those papers.
Oh, yeah. I walked back in there, and the nurse, by the way, the nurse that was helping me, literally trying to stab the paper, pointing out I had no coat or shoes, and nobody to pick me up. My parents' reverend picked me up. Literally, but I walked back in. Turns out that, I don't know what had happened, but the nurse switched my patch for me. She'd had it ready. She knew I was coming back in.
Yeah.
And even though that doctor was like, I don't know what had happened, but I could tell that she did not agree with him on that. And when I went back in to be like, don't do, it was -15. I had no coat, no shoes. And where my hospital bedded, there was no phone reception, because I was on a, Freedom Mobile back in the day. And that spot had no reception. So I couldn't call anyone. And this doctor knew all that.
They took you from where you were staying at that time.
Which my parents' house.
And so, of
and
course,
they took me with no
shoes and no jacket.
I had to be fished out of the bath, because I didn't know, I'd never taken, I would never been in withdrawal. I had no idea what was happening.
Oh, so this is now that you've
was when
come
the
up.
fentanyl,
Oh,
this
you
was
came
way
off.
before. No, this was, no.
Okay.
This was just a patch compromise.
Okay, yes, I understand that.
So I had no idea what was happening. It was the first time it happened. And it was humiliating experience where I was really badly treated. And that happened more than once. And at the same time, like, it, like, again, that's sort of the worst of humanity you see. But I also came to appreciate compassion fatigue, like, and how, like, not that doctor, but I mean, how sometimes really people, like, when you're, like, it's like how a nurse could hear someone screaming in pain and kind of be like, they can wait. Because they do know that person can wait, but it looks horrifying. You know, that's, like, you do have to develop certain, look, my mom's a nurse, even though, like I said. But,
thank you for sharing that experience, because that helps me to understand some experiences I had when I was on fentanyl.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what it was called.
I had a few major, I call them patch compromises, because I switched it standard as I should, and something went horribly wrong.
Yeah, something goes wrong, yes.
And if you don't, like, if you've not, like, okay, I was a bit boring. I'd never done recreational drugs and no interest in it. And I didn't know I was in withdrawal. The doctor did. He didn't tell me. Like,
and this is before CAMH.
Yeah, this is like part of the fentanyl. That not only that, my skin's like Teflon, and I wasn't allowed to swim or do anything because they could so easily compromise on me. I had to put physio tape. I would have to cut it in strips. I couldn't put it over it because the one time I did that, it actually caused it to hyper absorb because it brings blood to the surface. Okay,
exactly.
And I was suddenly like, "Whoa, what's happening?" And I realized I had to cut it in strips, so I would have to cut 4 strips, and I would have to do 2 75s and have to do I had like adhesive all over me. It was awful.
I'm trying to remember what my doctor told me because I was doing.
My skin is Teflon though. They would like slap it on, and we like
it would fall
off immediately. The nurses were like, "Huh?"
I remember because I did aqua exercises, and I became an aquafit instructor for people with fibromyalgia and chronic pain, arthritis, etc. But the doctor was like, there was a certain technique I can't remember that I had to do to make sure that it stuck on, because whether you're in the water, whether it's chlorine or salt, there were some side effects. It's been years now, but I remember there was something specific that we need to do.
I couldn't go near like baths, like things like it, like the bath. I would always make sure that was out of the water because my skin was already
I wasn't holding it,
and the compromises were so horrible.
Oh my gosh, it was horrible.
But like I was a water baby. I loved water my whole life, and not being able to swim.
Yeah.
The day that I was like, this is the last fentanyl patch. It was I remember being like, I can swim again. That's when I got super into like swimming so CAMH.
Yeah. So I'm glad you had made that decision, because a lot of us were not aware when we decided to come off of our heavy medications.
Here's what's crazy,
and
though.
It's how
it was a positive experience, a really positive. I was terrified because, well, it's like CAMH, because of it, the kind of work it does, had gotten a bad rap, and that was all I'd ever seen. And they took incredible care of me.
Yes.
I didn't actually go in withdrawal. That's the crazy thing. I dropped from
you.
Yeah, but they never, like, this is the craziest part. Even though I'd had those patch compromises, we dropped. We got rid of all the oral medication, and then I just dropped the 150, and just with nothing. They had ways of dosing prescribed for me.
Yes.
I didn't need it. I was supposed to be there 3 weeks. I was there 6 days. I skipped out.
How did you skip out?
This is
amazing.
when I talk about, like, I wonder, like if my family, like, we're really, like, resilient, because I, like, 6 days, I remember the first time I walked outside on one of the last days, and I was only outside for about 5 minutes, but the color of the sky and the flowers, it was like, I realized I'd been so numb. And I'd been so numb that I remember coming inside and my skin feeling raw just from the hairs, being able to feel the wind on the hairs of my skin, that I didn't realize I'd been so sedated I couldn't feel. And my skin being like uncomfortable, but being like, I've been that numb. And just, I have a very vivid, like, photographic visual memory. And it had been so blocked off that then it was almost like my brain was way too fast all at once. I was like,
it was reactivated.
It was like, holy, this is too loud. Like, but that allowed me to really start problem solving. And I still had a lot of pain though. Like it was not resolved. I did a ton of mindfulness therapy around my chronic pain and how to, I have ADHD and I used it to my advantage, sort of tap into that hyper focus through the pain, because pain, when you respond to it by resisting it, makes it worse.
It makes it worse,
and
exactly.
the ability to just zero it really does help. Like a huge part of pain management is a lot of, like, the mind is a huge element.
The mind is a huge element.
And so far,
the mind
drugs
and
have
the
been
emotions,
doing it.
yeah.
And all the medications I've been on, because I had the PTSD that had me on very strong, like, sedatives and everything, and I ended up, over years, redeveloping all those abilities and getting rid of all the medication and draining it down to, like, I was on, was it 22? Or was it you that was on 34? I'm trying to remember. Sorry, I was like, I wonder if it was a crazy number at one point.
In regards to pain medication?
Yeah, and now I'm like on...
Was it the gabapentin? Did we have that conversation? Yeah, I know.
They tried everything.
Yeah.
Gabapentin, Lyrica, Cymbalta. Like...
They put you on all that stuff. Yeah, they throw
everything at you. And I was like, ha. Like,
yeah.
I still just, like, think about 5 minutes outside and my skin was raw for the rest of the day just from being able to feel the wind on the hairs for the first time.
So was it a good feeling, or was it painful, or was it a combination of both?
Neither. It was like, it really was like waking up. Like that, like, kind of that wake up from Coma, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Like, because it really was, like, the world was more colorful. It was more beautiful. Yeah. It was more real. Like,
it is more real.
It was 6 days. It's not like the season changed, but it was brighter. It was like the colors were richer. This, like, sun felt warmer. I could actually feel things I had no idea I couldn't actually physically feel, like the wind on my hairs. Like, I knew that the pain was sedated, but it didn't occur to me what other things were zeroed out. And I had to relearn all kinds of things, like using chronic medications like that had messed with my body's ability to to do certain things, and like
even your intestines.
Yeah,
that was factor on that.
I am very fortunate. Like, well, so this all, like, ended up, I was still in and out of hospitals. The pain was more than I was good with. But it did keep me sharp.
Now, did you, besides regular traditional medications, do you use any type of natural type of medications? Were you administered any medical marijuana?
I tried that, and it didn't do a thing for my pain, unfortunately.
They didn't have you combine it with your regular medication to be able to help manage to cut down the amount of...
They put me on it before it was legalized. And it just, it never had done anything for me. Like...
But they didn't, sorry to interrupt you, they didn't do it in combination with your other medications? Oh, they did it by itself?
Yes. No. Sorry. And now I understand what you're asking.
Yes.
Apologies. So, I'm, like, sweating a little bit. It's like, lights.
Sorry.
No, that's just me. I overheat Raynauds. I'm freezing, I'm hot. I'm freezing, I'm hot. I'm on fire. Like, that's the nature of being me. Like, I mentioned earlier, my sweat glands only function from here to here. So... at any given time, my temperature is, like, freezing in this part of my body and on fire here. It's the shaving that I have here is not for style; it's for ventilating. It is legit. I've had it since I was 4. Because my hair is, like, I've had an undercut in my hair, like, just at the bottom, but it's gotten higher and higher as I've, like,
it's managed it.
Like, getting rid, like, that was difficult. But doing it, I had a great doctor, like, who worked with me on just mindfulness. And I remember being like, this is a bunch of hooey. Like, I don't know why I was, like, resisting it, because I think it was just my background. But I remember the day it started working.
Yeah.
And really working. And I was like, oh. And it really made a huge difference in just getting through, because I was able to tune out my pain like white noise. Like, if you've heard a high-pitched noise, I could just kind of drop the dial on it. I still struggle with that now. Yeah. Because when my body's in pain now, it's actually in pain. Yeah. It's not just lying to me. And I'll not realize. I'll just be like...
Yeah, because you're so used to it.
Yeah, and I still kind of ignore impulses. And then I'm like, oh, what's that? Like, and then I'll just be like, oh, ow.
But you realize your body's feeling normal pain.
It feels normal pain again. So
let's get back to how you advocated for yourself in order to have this surgery that doctors hadn't have thought of to be able to help you to get better.
I had some, I had to learn to like I said, respectfully decline, and sometimes not so respectfully, depending on I remember an occupational therapist denying me. I didn't want a power chair, but she basically was listening to me as if she agreed with me, and then she was like, I'm going to decline you. Boy, my job is hard. I have to decline people all day, and then they're mad at me, and I'm like, what's happening? I remember this occupational therapist being like, huh? And she was like, you don't have issues. I work with people who've had amputated legs. You don't have problems. And I was like, do you not know what and I remember going, do you know what an invisible disability is? And she didn't.
It's very scary to me when you speak with practitioners who doesn't know invisible disabilities. Or this person had a pelvic fracture. That is a very serious situation. But what supports the pelvis? What supports the bone? Muscle, fascia,
musculoskeletal things are huge.
Those can be and are more debilitating because what's supporting it isn't functioning.
Yeah. And something I got into was trigger point therapy. Because I got misdiagnosed from I'd had knee pain for years that they had misdiagnosed as being worn cartilage. Yeah. That I later figured out was actually, what is that again? I have high arches in my feet. And I can't think, I've got tip of the tongue, what's it called?
Plantar fasciitis?
I had mentioned it earlier. I get tip of the tongue a lot. Plantar fasciitis, which is a muscle in the arch of my foot. And as soon as I started dealing with that, and I had done physio for years and seen multiple physiotherapists who were just like, oh, it's permanent, it's cartilage wear. And it was a muscle in my foot, and I still have no knee pain to this day.
It's the fascia and the muscles. And the fascia, if the fascia is acting up badly, it can create havoc in the whole body.
And trigger point therapy is basically what leads to an injury is micronauts that collect from usually your muscles compensating for something that's injured or out of alignment. And it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. And it's actually very solid, the pain, you might feel it here, but it's actually your hand, all the muscles for your hand are right here. And if you kind of do this, you'll notice, I can tell you which fingers. I do this to my friends. I'll be like, you're overusing your thumb. And they're like, how'd you know? I'm like, texting too much.
And you learned this on your own time.
Yes. The chronic, the trigger point cell therapy workbook.
Okay. Yes.
It's a father and daughter who wrote this incredible guide that allows you to both look up reference images of your pain is here, this is where the trigger point is, and then teaches you how to isolate the muscle and figure it out even if you don't come from that background. And I treated so much of the issues I was dealing with that hadn't been dealable by doing that and learning it really well. And just getting really into trigger point. And I was saying, a lot of my friends and family get me to they'll be like, can you do that thing you do? I'm
trying to find the book.
Yes, it's that one.
This one?
Yep. The Trigger Point Therapy Workbook.
So the title is The Trigger Point Therapy Workbook, Your Self-Treatment Guide for Pain Relief by Amber Davies, Claire Davies.
Like I said, it gives you a visual guide. It shows you how to figure these things out yourself and how to be certain. And it gives you multiple ways of referencing. And it allowed me to really manage a lot of musculoskeletal damage I didn't know I had.
Which actually causes the pain.
Yeah, the neurological malfunction I was experiencing basically had me hyper connected to my system. So I could feel triggers, knots, little knots collecting. I could feel them. And that's why to this day I'd be like, what the? I'm being like, oh, right, I feel pain normally again. Because I used to be that if anything was off, I could feel it immediately.
It's hypersensitive.
Super hype. I felt just way too tuned in. like plugged into it.
Here you go.
Thank you. I was going to actually ask you because I was like,
Yes, yeah.
it's like this happens to me all the time and it bugs me just because it's uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
Like, because they only function from here to here. They're like overcompensating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
to release all the, because you said that the rest of your glands are not open. They're not functioning.
I went to a sauna with a friend. It was like a hot cold therapy place, and I'm in like there was like a 5-level sauna where the top level it was like you're on fire. She's streaming sweat, and I'm like,
you're
like,
good.
like not even like I'm just dry.
Right.
Except from here to here, I'm like. Brrr.
Yeah.
The first time I did hot yoga and I had dyed my hair and I just remember streaming dye
red.
on my body and going, oh, just from here to here though, you know?
So let's get back to your story with advocating for yourself and finding what was this miraculous surgery that you found that you convinced the doctors to do on you, even though this is something that they've never thought of, to the point where the next time I saw you, you're like, I had the surgery and you were shoveling snow. I couldn't believe it. You're like, yeah,
frozen snow.
I'm watching you.
Hey.
And I'm just like, I can't believe
Just
this.
standing there like, hey, what's up? It's
yeah.
like
You were like, I have so much energy. I'm like, oh my gosh. So please tell us what happened. What was the type of surgery? What was your research?
Like, you know, what I did though, I think other people could easily do to better their own situation. Because I figured it out. It was a lot of guesswork. But it wasn't even miraculous. It was logic. It was just going, okay, this, and this. What if we try this? And then my doctor being like, okay, it's solid. And then talking to surgeons about it. And the surgeons, basically, the surgery I had was to completely reverse the GI surgery, be damned.
So that needs to be corrected. Okay.
Because the theory of how it could be hurting me completely outclassed what it could be doing for me, potentially at that point. So, and then they wanted to also, my gallbladder had been like about this big.
Right.
And I had been
backed up.
How I'd gotten so skinny, I had to be on a 0-fat diet for a year plus because of COVID.
Okay.
And that they wanted, like I had 4 GI surgeries at that point, and every GI surgery increases your risk for blocks, for gastroenteritis, for issues. And so they didn't want to do another procedure, especially when I was like, guys, what if we try this? They're like, you know.
Right.
But so we needed to do a valve repair. We needed to do like so it was these 3 different things in one. And it was really, I had improved my overall well-being and functioning a lot from where I'd started. And part of that was, it was very much physically and mentally embracing. And just at that point, I was very empowered and proud of who I was. And not who I used to be, but who I was.
And the fact that you could speak for yourself.
Yeah.
So you figured out in your research.
I'd even gotten to talk at Ryerson's Accessibility Conference about studying disability and then becoming disabled, because it's a real lesson in humility that no matter how close you are to something, no matter how much you understand it. Like my mom as a nurse had worked with disabled kids, and I had a lot of my friends growing up had disabilities. And so I was very close to it, and I thought I understood it as an outsider. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. And it was humbling. It's huge. And I wouldn't take it back. It was not, it feels like that those 8 years were so long. I did a lot on them, but like partly just to keep sane. Pain can drive you crazy if you do nothing. So I did almost too much. And at first, like, I'll get to that. But so the surgery was like really scary for me because they agreed to do it. So this is like a journey that I went on where I worked with my doctor. I saw specialists, and it culminated in having surgery, like this combination surgery of several different things in one major surgery.
So what were these several different things?
What I was just describing. So we're doing like, it involves like, I'm trying to think of the whole, like, so they're going to have to go in, and move things around in my GI, connect this, remove this to fix this, like, and I had enough evidence and research at that point that I strongly believed it could improve my pain. I didn't think it would reverse it at all, because as optimistic as I was realistic. I always looked at what could go wrong and never let myself go into that, like, wildest dream space. But then when those things happened, it's like, you know, like, but being grounded in reality, because I had to sign off on that surgery because it was basically one of a kind, what they did.
And you sat down and discussed what things should probably... You coordinated. You worked alongside with your doctors to figure out what the different things to do.
Because the surgeons, they were it was the two top specialists in, like, gastroenterology at Western that I'd seen over the years and talked about with this, and so it became this sort of group effort during the pandemic, which, you know, quarantine for me was like, what changed at first, because my life was very similar, but it really I got 2 days notice. My surgery was basically the last, like, it was coming, like, they basically had to sign off on it voluntarily and basically go, I'm aware this is unique. I am asking them to do this, and whatever happens to me, they are not responsible.
Right.
I am.
Okay.
That was hard because I had to really trust myself. And I really had to make peace with the idea that if I screwed up, and I was wrong, but that I could live with that.
Yes, because it was on you. Before
I would say, and yes, I had to trust myself enough that I was like, if this backfires and makes, you know, I had worked really hard at that point and improved things a lot and learned to live so much better, and I was happier and I was in a good place. And it was scary. It was really scary.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm risking so much. And it was a real, like, is it worth it? But it's that I was like, I just had this instinct that I was like, I need to do this.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't work, because I will always wonder, what if it had? And I really didn't see it doing what it actually did. And so I woke up from the surgery. They'd forgotten to connect my morphine pump, and I was not in pain. I was like... And they had to, like, staple my hospital gown to the bed because I was like, party! Like, I'd been in so much pain.
You had so much energy.
And I was like, I feel great. And they're like, we forgot to hook up your pain meds. I'm like, huh? Like, my pain level had been so high, and it just went down to, like, that I literally didn't feel like I had major surgery. And they were like, kid, lay down. Like, I was like, ha, gotta go live, you know?
Yeah.
Wanna go snowball fight. Like, just like, yeah.
You know, the amazing thing is, and a lot of us with chronic pain have had procedures or things done to us that wasn't our consent.
Yeah.
And what the surgery that you had in the States was done incorrectly. It wasn't done to your consent.
Yeah, and it was not what I had signed off on.
No, it wasn't. And that's traumatizing.
They forgot to get my signature in the first place.
Oh, my
beforehand.
goodness.
So I'd had the surgery, and they screwed it up, and I didn't sue them. Like, I developed this weird ability, not a weird ability. Like, I developed a compassion I hadn't, which is also from my own ability to be ignorant and screw up and learn and be given second chances. And I just had lots of opportunities to sue or do whatever, and it never... I developed an ability to forgive and let it go that I needed.
You need to do that, because to heal.
There's so much anger I could have.
Yes, I understand.
But that anger doesn't hurt anybody
except
except for me.
You. Yeah.
It's toxic. And I decided that even though, like, I'd had a lot of medical trauma, and I'd had trauma before that, that's a totally other story. I'd been through a lot at that point, and I didn't want that to define me, and I wanted to, you know, I got this amazing recovery and almost just got depressed afterwards because I'd gone through so much and I'd been so focused on my physical health, and it's at the time, I was too embarrassed to tell anyone how much I was suffering.
Yeah.
Because I was like, nobody had told me you have to be like, yay. And I was yay in a lot of ways, but I was dealing with a lot of, you know, I think my coping mechanism was just keep moving until it catches up. Otherwise, it'll catch up to you. At that point, I had been on a roller coaster I didn't want to be on for so long that I just couldn't keep running. And it caught up to me. And I was so scared that if I ever stopped to like look at that it would be more than I could handle. But the experience of like dealing with my trauma and getting closure and getting free of it, every single time, even when they were huge, scary things, I felt like I was being chased by Jaws. And when I finally faced it, it was like a guppy. Each time, like, it was briefly uncomfortable. But I got lighter and freer than I'd been before all that had happened, before my lung failure. Because there'd been so much that I'd collected already that I'd never dealt with. And I'm still learning to, like, the sort of the chapter out that came after was, like, getting my childlike joy for life back. And just the ability to just...
So I can still remember you shoveling that snow like it was nothing. And I was just like, what happened? You're like, I had the surgery. I told my mother about the surgery she had.
I remember that too. Like, I was like, I think that was a lot right there. Okay. You know, like...
I told my mother goes, can you have that surgery too? Will it help you? I'm like, I don't know what surgery she had. I have to find out.
I wish it was a miracle perfect surgery, but I think it's better that what it is that I did was... I believe anyone could do what I did.
Yeah.
Like, all I really did was own what was already happening.
Yeah.
And just have the ability to challenge doctors on their diagnoses based on actual, like, evidence. Or at least being like, explain.
Yeah.
Don't just tell me this is not, like, blankly, you can't recover from this. I want to understand. And the more I did that, the more it got clear that they just didn't know.
Yeah. And a lot of times the doctors don't know.
Yeah, it's I still remember in one time of being in the hospital where a resident student was being very like, I'm a doctor now. And he was like, and he was being shadowed by another doctor. And I can't remember what had happened in that moment. But he upset me so much that I stood up shaking in bed to advocate for myself. And the resident went to cut me off, and the doctor shot her and said, no.
Yeah.
She's advocating for herself, and you're wrong, so you're going to listen.
It is one of the things that, and doctors are now being more vulnerable in regards to chronic pain and complex medical conditions. They said, we do not know enough.
We don't. We are in the dark ages still. Think about how little we understand or can fix anything right now.
Exactly.
We're going to look back and be like, we look back on medical science 50 years ago and we're like, barbarians. They're definitely going to look back on this and how little we knew.
Yes.
Like, they cut into each other. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that stuff, like, I think we're going to look back and be like, that was the early days.
Yeah.
You know? We don't understand anything. The power of the brain, the power of my ability to just go, I'm going to do it anyway.
You think, and the control that you had, like I think for me and a lot of us who deal with chronic pain and complex medical conditions, it's losing that control. And you figured it out and said, okay, let me use my knowledge and work with what I'm learning and work with these doctors. And you guys figured it out and you had that control. You said, you know what, if this works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, but it's on me.
Yeah.
And that was such a sense of power.
And you know, that doctor that I went to thank him and say thank you for like helping create this. He said, no, you did this. I didn't do this. You did this yourself. And like, but in a like good. Yeah. Like he was happy about it. So, and I had this thought suddenly that just escaped me right there.
Well, you did mention something that now after the surgery, you're doing well physically, but mentally you still hadn't caught up.
Yeah, because I think, well, I know that I was actively experiencing traumatic things. Things were happening so much. And I was really life or death fighting it for a while and then just trying to survive. Because I was still in more pain than I could handle all the time.
Yeah. Even after the surgery.
Yeah. No, after the surgery, no.
Oh, okay.
The only time I feel pain now, like my pain actually functions normally. Like if my muscle hurts, it's because my muscles, like I'm overworking it. Do you know how often now I'm like, oh, this feels weird. And then I go, holy crap, look at all the knots that are in here. And I just kind of release them and I'm like, oh, way better. Like,
you have, honestly, this, I want to cry because I'm having this on my legs and I'm sitting there going, the pain.
I used
I'm trying to
spend January and February in the hospital every year.
Because it was so bad.
The cold would hurt me. The cold last week.
Oh my God, it was hell.
But it wasn't pain that hit me. It was fatigue.
You're dealing with the fatigue,
when I felt the pain, though, it helped identify musculoskeletal stuff that I treated myself and I released. And I forgot I could do that briefly. Like, I was like, oh, this feels terrible. And then I was like, wait a minute. And I, like, got out my, like, I have, like, a percussor thing that helps. And I released it. And I was like, oh, I feel way better. I have to unlearn. I trained myself to, like, deal with pain and that I've had to unlearn. And it's almost kind of been challenging. But, like...
So with the fatigue, were you able to use... Because the pain and the fatigue was hell. I was like, I even called a friend of mine the other day. I said, I'm so sorry. You called. I have no idea what happened. My body just shut down and that was it. And then the pain was acting up. Were you able to also treat your fatigue using those trigger points out of curiosity?
Pain is exhausting.
Yeah, that is.
Pain. Like, I still remember they put me on a sleep medication that they ended up, like, I ended up developing a tolerance to it, but it would sort of drop my pain levels and my energy would go up instead of down. They actually treated me during the daytime with a sleep medication for a long time because it would, lowering my pain, increase my energy. So currently, I did something that scared me because, I continually, always kind of pushing the boundary of because doing all this work there's no regret. There's no negative. The trauma, I was so scared of doing it and I wish I'd done it forever ago.
Yeah.
It's made me lighter and freer than I knew I could be. And one of the best things is when people meet me for the first time and then they find out what I've been through, they're like, I could never have told you you'd been through that. And that's the point, it doesn't own me anymore. I own it. But also, there were patterns in my whole life that because I always run from it, I was at the mercy of it rather than the other way around. I couldn't, they repeated, and working with these things, like, I don't know, I was terrified of it, but when I started to do it, like I said, I keep getting lighter and it's like, oh, let's just deal with more trauma. Like, and it's actually been liberating.
You found that it was a gradual process with your mental health after the surgery now, no more pain. It's just the self-realization.
Yeah. And
becoming more lighter and appreciating it.
Well, if I really look at it, my mind allowed me to do a lot of that. It was mind over body, a lot of it.
Yes.
And I'd not taken the time to take care of that mind. And it got burnt out, like...
Because you're taking care of the pain so much.
Yeah, and I never thought about... Like, I've been able to break lifelong habits. This interview is a whole... Currently, this is something I've been terrified to do. I have not publicly talked about this. I've talked one-on-one. And I've never shared this. And I've been scared of that because I had a stage fright that has crippled me my whole life. And this has been
for a person who dances.
Delightful. Can you tell I'm terrified? And by the way, energy-wise, I couldn't sleep last night because I was so nervous about this. So this is me. No medication to help me with that, with my energy, and I'm still wide awake.
Yes.
And have energy.
So now that you finished the surgery, you're doing better with your pain management. You just have what is considered normal pain, which is, oh my God, this is a hallelujah moment.
Oh, it really is.
So what now, the conditions that you've been managing more so is the Raynaud, I can never pronounce the word.
Raynauds phenomenon.
Yes. The Raynauds phenomenon. Anything else that you've been managing? You mentioned about the
ADHD.
fatigue. ADHD. Mm-hmm.
I
Now,
would
you've
say,
had that from you were a child, you were saying.
I got diagnosed. I diagnosed myself, and my doctor was like, "Oh yeah," like we did all the testing for it. But I just remember going to my doctor and be like, "So I'm like a classic ADHD case." He's like, "Yeah, were you not diagnosed here?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Yeah, let's
You
get
probably
that."
had it from before and you never were diagnosed, yeah.
Well, but I use elements of ADHD to my advantage. Hyperfocus is one of them. The ability to kind of like tune things out and zone in was what I did with my pain. I used like learning to think outside the box, to use your challenges to like become your strengths, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that friend, my best friend Mikey, I just remember he said something to me at that low moment of my life. He said, "Right now, you have all the control and all the power. You just have no idea. You just have to take it back." And I remember at the time being like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And he was completely right. Because I didn't have more money, more social power, more anything. And I turned it around and turned it into something that I'm still like, oh, I did that. Like, it's still like, and it taught me a lot about the ability, like the power of the mind to just kind of create, like, and like how much a lot of anything in life is, what are you going to let yourself do? What are you going to get past your own fear to do? For me to be sitting here talking to you, to get past what I realized. Oh my goodness, I sweat about this a lot. But just, you wouldn't know it, often we don't even realize our, cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
Cognitive dissonance will cause your brain to change the channel before you can even really get to what is happening. They're often in blind spots. You can't quite see them. And as a human, you can't see yourself perfectly.
Right.
So but a huge part of my health was finding peers and really supportive people in my life who helped me catch these things, who knew I wanted to learn even if it was hard.
Yes.
And I was okay with hard feedback.
Yes.
Even when it was difficult.
Yeah.
Like, I made all the difference. And sometimes there were awful conversations. Like, Mikey did something I respect the hell out of him for, because I had claimed that there was something I had never dealt with in terms of trauma. And that I was like, look, he was the only person I ever told. And I was like, I have total closure. Don't ever bring this up. And him coming to me and being like, look, I don't think you have closure. And I'd never yelled at him. And I ended up, without him saying anything else, yelling at him and him pointing out and being like, don't yell at me. And I'm like, I don't have closure. If I'm yelling at you for the first time in our friendship, like, we originally had agreed to like help each other see our blind spots and to be the one who was honest, but in a way to like where you believe in the other person. And Mikey is one of the only people I've like, chosen family. I consider him to be my brother. Because, like somebody, that I would like, who's come through the fire for me, that I would do anything for. And but one of the best things I get to do these days is give back. That's why I wanted to get over my fear of sharing, is there were so many people who had their own issues with health and all kinds of things that just made such a difference for me when they didn't have to.
Yes.
No, like, it still blows me away. And the best thing I get to do is be one of those people who gives it back. Now that I have some, like, because I'm still like,
you were mentioning that you are, they've asked you to be a leader to be able to help up your old chronic pain group, something along those lines?
Well, yeah, I used to facilitate chronic pain workshops as a peer, which I originally got into because the course I was taught, I was like, this this info was great, but no one was listening because it was being taught by two young, healthy nurses who could not connect with what they just were like. You could tell there was no connect, and I ended up like people just it made a difference, and a lot of people were like watched me kind of continually improve, and it gave them hope, and them having hope gave me hope, you know, and hope. That was all I really needed.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't need money. I didn't need power. I didn't need a lot of things as long as I kept just hope. And yeah, currently, I'm trying to think what other, I have, well, synesthesia, not a condition.
Okay.
Perceptual phenomena. I'm forgetting a bunch, I know.
Synesthesia.
Synesthesia. It's a tough one.
Synesthesia.
I have
it just
love for the color green, but I experience emotions have colors, and color has emotion. For me, green is happiness, and right shades of yellow green are like childlike joy. As a kid, I spent a lot of time in like bright forests in the summer, and those are like some of my best memories. And so I associated that bright yellow green, and I can actually see a bright yellow green and experience just happiness.
So you find that you're using also colors to be able to help with you manage your mental wellness.
Yeah, like just really interesting. Like I when I learned about synesthesia, I'd really realized that I had hang-ups with certain colors that had more to do with
I've always seen you in green.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with green. And I'll never forget, I painted, it was actually traffic light green was the name of the color. That's the first color I painted in my bedroom. And you could see the window glowing from down the street. And I was like, yeah. And my mom said, you will hate this within a week. That was how long ago? And I'm like, yellow, green.
Yeah. But, like for me, blues, and that's why you see plants around. I love green because it makes me feel like there's life.
Yeah.
And blue reminds me of the ocean and the sky. It just reminds me I'm in the water. So I understand that connection.
My apartment, my kitchen is green. My apartment itself is I like color theory and how colors like go together beautifully in jewel tones and different shades.
Yeah.
And so my living spaces are always very colorful. Like my couch is bright lime green, my kitchen's bright lime green, my curtains are bright lime green.
Yeah.
My parrot is bright lime green. Like, I mean, if you experienced happiness by seeing that color, you'd surround yourself with it too.
Yes.
But like there's so many things I've done for my well-being that have, allowed me as an adult to change things I never thought I could. Like genuinely break through barriers I never broken through. And heal relationships I didn't think I could, or develop better connections to the people in my life. A lot of it had to do with my own trust issues. Like, and even just being able to share that. I had really, the isolating experience I went through caused me to kind of just shell in and sort of, I don't know, I kept isolating myself and invalidating what I had to say and not dealing with why. One of my first memories was being really excited to tell one of my parents something and getting shot down. And a lot of like how we respond to situations will actually, just from certain behavioral psychology things, will just pattern burn in from that first response to, like if you put your hand up in class and you were excited to give the answer and you gave the wrong answer. Yes. And then you're like, I'm never putting my hand up again.
Yes.
And, there were so many things. I told myself I never wanted family. Family is the most important thing to me. But I said that because I didn't think it'd be responsible for me to have a family with what was happening to me. And so rather than feel like I can't have that, I was like, I don't think this was good. But I was like, yes, I'm going to say I don't want that. But the minute I said, why not, I got so much less lonely, and it was just me letting myself do something. And I'd come from sort of a world where that wasn't really like explored more, and I've really kind of gone into it. And yeah, it's, you know, regaining my physical health was one thing, but
Claiming your mental health.
yeah, how, like, after everything that I'd done, you have a second chance at life. You want to build it.
Yeah.
You want to build from freedom, from joy, not from pain. And you want it to have meaning and intention. And, you know, I had struggled like at first because I nobody was telling me you have to do it like this, but I was telling me you have to like immediately do 10,000 things because you said you wanted to do this, that, and the other thing. And I caught myself just being like, I really don't want to. Things are stable for the first time in a decade. I'd like to just let things be peaceful for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I made myself so wrong for being like that. I'm like, you're stagnating. Like, it was a weird...
Yeah.
I've had to have a very critical inner dialogue that I've had a surprising amount of success changing that dialogue. I catch myself having compassion for myself, and I've had the meanest dialogue I could tell you about, like, my mental health. I am a, like, unconscious saboteur, like, you know, and the journey I went on allowed me to finally, like, love and appreciate myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, to make that show up more. Like, you know, I know that I had lived a lot for what I thought mattered to other people, not what I had wanted. Not because that was just what, you know, I was told this is what success looks like. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what this. And I had done those things, but they didn't mean anything to me. And almost losing so much really put me in touch with what mattered.
Yes.
I made it like really clear. And then going like, oh yeah, none of that mattered a whiff to me. And now, like, what's interesting is, like, whatever the definition of success is, I proved something to myself that I know just made it so that, like, you can't tell me I'm not a success. It doesn't matter.
No.
Like, I just have a belief in something I did that I've never had.
Yeah.
And it's not an overconfidence or a pride. It's like
appreciation.
Like a cohesion. My brain and my body are like working together.
Connecting.
And like, I didn't know they were working so much against each other.
Girl, I'm telling you, that is one of the main things that I found a psychologist, I'm forgetting his name, Dr. Martin Sommerfeld. He's amazing. He has been helping me with the mind-body connection because they talk about it in the CBT classes a bit. They talk about it in the MBSR program at Wasser Pain Clinic. But maybe it took me a while, but I'm just now understanding how separate. And anyone that deals with chronic pain and complex medical conditions, there's a separation. And if they're not connected, this creates more havoc in the body.
Yeah.
So the fact that now you're starting to find that connection, even working with whatever conditions you have now, to find that inner peace. There's a book actually I'm going to forward to you.
For me, like, while I still, yes, please.
That it's called The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. They have the PDF and they have the audiobook on YouTube. I'm going to forward it to you both.
Please.
And what you're speaking about, a lot of it he is addressing in regards to, yes, people have chronic pain due to actual physical conditions, but how people manage it through the emotions and how much you can actually overcome it. It takes a while. It takes different techniques, but the mind-body connecting together and to feel like, it's okay, I'm with you. We are here together and we have done well. Even with all that's happened, we have done well. When you've gone through so much, you begin to question yourself because you're thinking, I wanted to be here. I wanted to be there. No, this is your journey.
Yeah.
And your journey is to help and impact others.
Yeah. And just simply because I have a belief in people that I never did not because of the negative experiences, but because the people that just, it puzzles me to this day. Because,
So what are you doing now?
Now? It's not question mark, it's a discovery.
Yeah.
Because I'm so aware of how I lived previously.
Yeah.
And even like everything I'm describing to you, this mental health journey,
Mm-hmm.
I, like, something clicked today that I hadn't, like, I have a issue of not acknowledging the things I do.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I had been in a dialogue of being like, you're not doing as much in the physical world as you did, you know, when I was trying to cope with all the things to keep myself distracted.
Mm-hmm.
And I made myself really wrong for that and didn't really notice the insane amount of work I'd done.
Yeah.
Even though I have a lot of people in my life pointing it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the process of getting to do this interview, I was like, oh, look what I did. Like, and just the inability to, like, acknowledge and just, yeah, like where I'd felt like I was stagnating.
Yeah.
Even though everyone was like, look at this. And like it, if at the end of the day, like, it can be not a simple or clear journey, but it's worthwhile to be able to look at that person in the mirror and be like, and like, not in a douchey way, but in like, I got you. And you got me. And it's like, there is a cohesion and there is a appreciation, because I mean, I remember for a while being angry at my body.
Yes.
And my body is a champ. I remember my ex, I still think this is the most flattering description. Said that I had the spirit of a phoenix and the body of a monster truck for overcoming things. Like, because I just was able to recover from so much.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, but I'm always so mad at my body.
Yeah.
Even though it had gotten me through things I shouldn't have gotten through, and turning that dialogue around, and like, it's not just like, oh yeah, theoretical, like whimsical nonsense. No, it actually makes a huge difference to my quality of life, to how I approach things, to really genuinely being like, what do I want to do with life? And being like, oh wow, I could create something.
Yes.
And if I approach it the way I've approached other things, it's like, ooh, you know. And I think that as a society, we're never meant to experience what people go through with disability, the isolation, the grief, and that happened as a world.
Yeah.
And it's affected a lot of people's mental
and
physical health.
Even with the past pandemic, yes, a lot of people said that the pandemic, because they felt so isolated, a lot of them, they had to be on their own.
And then
they
fear,
did struggle with that.
And we live in a society where health stuff, it's like the idea of like, you can have health issues, you can have pain, and you can love your life and have a great life is true. But it's like a foreign concept.
And it's okay.
But
the fact to understand that it's okay. It took me 20 years to be able to say, why is all this stuff keep happening? And I'm thinking I'm moving forward. Then I had to remind myself, enjoy your life with where you're at.
Yeah.
Have the hope that things will still improve, but enjoy your life with where you're at. And you mentioned about the community, having people that understand.
Yeah, made all the difference to just having somebody
your energy too.
Who just gets your perspective, and that they're out there.
Yeah.
Keep looking and connecting. And for me, like, hope is kind of infectious. I've found that, like, just, I love to just kind of be like, guess what? Life is lovely.
Yes.
And people being like, I don't know. And then being like, oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
By the end of our dialogue, we're like, yes, yes. So, like, that can, I don't know. Like, these days, people could really feel really resigned about the idea of making a difference. Making a difference doesn't have to be out there on a world scale. It can be right here in your community. It just, you never ever know what a difference something you're doing can make.
Yes, it's true.
And yeah, even in my own journey, I invalidated my self-expression a lot, and told myself that what I had to say, what I had to say was important. And then being trained in community leadership, people kept being like, oh my God, how are you not telling this to other people, you know? And learning to trust, and realizing how like giving up my like trust issues and how I tied my identity to things, and giving up just, wow, I'd made things mean a lot that they didn't have to mean that, you know, like I made it mean that anytime I shared something I was going through that I didn't have control over, that it made me feel vulnerable. Instead of, I'm creating this space for this person. Like when you create a vulnerable, like it allows for the other person to be vulnerable in a way too.
Yes, it does.
And I'd always had my shields up so high.
Because you're afraid people may reject you.
I was so afraid of rejection, and I dealt with it so much that, you know, by the end, like I'd gotten this recovery, but I'd done it like,
yeah.
And I was still like, just the breaking through trust issues. Like my group from the leadership program, haven't told them I'm doing this interview yet, but they've been encouraging me to. Love you guys. Like I really trusted them.
Yeah.
And just gave up how uncomfortable it made me, and just decided to try trust, because trust and safety, the actual safety, you know, I was never compromising my safety, but my trust, I felt so vulnerable, you know, and giving that up, I've not regretted giving it up. I've not regretted the risks I've taken, because they keep giving back. I've developed connections with people that I wanted forever. And, you know, I was always like, you can share with me, and not realizing I was not, like, I so struggled to share when I was suffering, while I was suffering.
Yeah.
I would only share about it when I had control again.
Yes.
And it was so lonely.
Yes, it's very lonely.
And it was so isolating, and I didn't have to do it like that, but that's how I learned to just, and it's been a weird squishy journey of giving it up. And strangely, the squishiness has become its own strength. You know, its squishiness is a resilience, you know, and developing a resilience and trusting and realizing, oh, I can have a life where I have community and I have connection and I have a huge chosen family, and like, and I get to create from freedom, genuine freedom.
I was going to ask you any final statements or advice to share with the listeners, but I think that's what you just shared in this last 10 minutes really encapsulated the things that we need to do.
Yeah.
You know, as people who are going through it, who have gone through it, or those who have friends or family members that are going through it, giving them that space, to hold space for them that they can share. They're not complaining. Like, I'm not saying that people don't complain, but the freedom to say that I can actually share this and just say encouragement to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to find that freedom to share. That was very poignant. It really hit home for me. And so many people I've met, and you could even attest to that to yourself, to the people that you've met that deal with these type of conditions, this is how we feel.
Yeah.
And having community makes a whole lot of difference. You feel more alive.
Yeah. Life is richer.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story today, Risa.
Hey, thank you for being part of my news story by helping me get past this. When we ran into each other, I was being encouraged to do a podcast or something, sharing my story. And she was like, can I interview you? And I was like, coincidentally. And it's actually been a huge fear of mine. It might not seem like it, but we did it.
Yeah, we did it. And you were saying one last thing, that your name is a Spanish name, and what does it mean?
It's a Spanish word.
It's a Spanish word.
It means laughter.
Laughter.
Yeah.
Risa means laughter.
When my mom had me at 41, and then when I was born, as perfectly healthy little redheaded, like, and they were so happy they couldn't stop laughing, and they decided to name me Laughter.
Wow. That's
and
beautiful.
I love my name.
That is beautiful.
Turned out to be appropriate.
Well, Risa, thank you again for being on the Freedom to Know Wellness podcast. We really appreciate her sharing her story. As I always like to close, reading information is one thing, but listening to a lived experience is another and paramount. And that's what we do here at Freedom to Know Wellness. Be well. Okay.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To have your voice heard on Freedom to Know Wellness, email us at info@freedomtoknowwellness.ca. For content like this and more, subscribe to the Freedom to Know Wellness blog at freedomtoknowwellness@substack.com. And for more podcasts, follow our FTK Wellness YouTube channel and find Freedom to Know Wellness on all major podcast platforms. And don't forget us on social media at FTK Wellness.